Ah, yes, the NFL. A league built on speed, power, and relentless work ethic. Well, at least most of the time. For every gym rat posting off-season workout montages at 5 a.m., there's a guy out there treating training camp like a casual walk through the park.
Yep. That's a rep. That's a rep. Coming out. Good.
And once the actual season rolls around, heck, who knows what they're up to on their off days. And hey, look, we get it. The NFL season can be absolutely brutal. Bodies break down and motivation dips, but some of these guys have practically made an art form out of doing just enough to cash the check.
Zone read. Desperately trying to keep him out of the end zone. Sanders, and he bangs it in.
So, without further ado, let's name some names and call out the 10 laziest stars in the game today. Leonard Williams, DL, Seattle Seahawks. The book on Leonard Williams has largely been the same, dating all the way back to 2015, when the New York Jets drafted him 6th overall out of USC. At his best, he has the talent to be a big contract edge rusher. But the problem is that he's only at his best when he actually cares. And keeping his motivation up has been a bit of a recurring issue for the 10-year veteran. There are stretches where he's violent, dominant, and absolutely wrecks games. The Seahawks saw some of that last season when he tallied 11 sacks, but far too often, both fans and coaches alike notice that Williams just cozies into cruise control.
Has always been stout.
Big play here, 3rd down and 6. Brissett under pressure.
And if Seahawks fans think that this isn't going to happen to them, well, buckle up, because the Jets and Giants fans would write a dissertation on the disappearing act of Leonard Williams, especially with some of the mail-in performances that he put out for their respective franchises during his tenures there. The Giants stint should be particularly concerning, because it was a very similar trajectory to Seattle, where he arrived, was nearly invisible, then exploded for a double-digit sack year, only to vanish once more the following season. Though if history repeats, and hey, it usually does, expect more jogging, more shoulder shrugs, and more post-game quotes about staying focused, especially if this young Seahawks team struggles right out the gate. Unfortunately, Seattle's passionate fan base should really brace themselves, because the Leonard Williams experience is not known for consistent effort or production. Miles Sanders, RB, Dallas Cowboys. The story on Miles Sanders has followed a pretty frustrating arc, one that Cowboys fans may be about to witness firsthand. Once upon a time in Philly, Sanders looked like the next great dual-threat back. His game featured explosive cuts, home run bursts, and enough wiggle to make even elite defenders whiff. He was a Pro Bowler, a key piece on some great teams, and a back who genuinely struck fear into would-be tacklers.
Zone read. Desperately trying to keep him out of the end zone. Sanders, and he bangs it in.
But here's the rub. That version of Sanders has been fading for a while. And fading is putting it lightly. Since landing a nice payday in Carolina, well, Sanders looked more like a back trying to avoid contract than one trying to create it, gliding through lanes, rarely fighting for extra yards, and often jogging through plays with a disinterested air. Panthers fans got wise fast, as Chuba Hubbard consistently outworked him and the coaching staff seemed to lose faith. Now, he's in Dallas, where veteran running backs go out to pasture. Seriously, the Miles Sanders experience is not trending toward a career renaissance. Right now, it is trending towards ceremonial starter, following the same well-worn path as so many past their prime RBs in Big D. Deebo Samuel, WR, Washington Commanders. The book on Deebo Samuel has been well known around the league for quite a few years now. He's an absolute monster when he's locked in, and maddeningly casual when he's not. Back in his early 49ers days, Deebo earned a reputation as a positionless weapon who could run through tackles, break the game open on a jet sweep, or shake a DB out of his shoes. He played with a real edge, and defensive coordinators had to game plan around him. But over the last couple of years, the narrative has really changed in a major way. And with how he's looked so far in OTAs, Commanders fans should be very worried. Whether it's lackadaisical route running, inconsistent effort on blocking plays, or simply mailing in an entire game if the ball isn't coming his way, Deebo's effort has turned into a frequent talking point.
Deebo Samuel in the backfield. He gets it on the toss. Blockers in front. Samuel cuts it back inside the 5.
and he still seemed unbothered during the early days of camp with a new team. That in and of itself is kind of concerning. Sure, it's just practice and many guys can play their way into shape, but with his track record, the now viral practice clip of him jogging through a drill like he was headed to brunch clearly is not an isolated incident, and in fact, should be viewed as a major cause for concern in the nation's capital. George Pickkins, WR, Dallas Cowboys. Pickkins burst onto the scene in Pittsburgh with circus catches and explosive downfield plays, quickly becoming one of the league's most gifable receivers. But behind the scenes, coaches and fans alike noticed a troubling trend. Frequent lapses in effort when he wasn't the primary read, and a body language clinic and frustration when things didn't go his way. The strange thing with Pickkins is it isn't a conditioning thing. It's just more of a focus and maturity issue. He just kinda checks out when things aren't going his way. Either that or he has a massive outburst and causes his team to get penalized. Now that he's landed in Dallas, a franchise that is no stranger to wide receiver drama, and he's being paired with CeeDee Lamb in an offense that needs sharp execution, not sulking, we'll have to see if he's ready to answer the bell. Anthony Richardson Sr., QB, Indianapolis Colts. The tale of Anthony Richardson is still being written, but the early chapters have not exactly inspired a whole lot of confidence in his staying power. Drafted 4th overall as a raw but physically gifted quarterback, Richardson arrived in Indy with sky-high expectations.
The Indianapolis Colts select Anthony Richardson, quarterback, Florida.
There were flashes, big ones in fact, that teased franchise-altering potential, but consistency around his focus and effort just hasn't been there. Like when he infamously took himself out of a game. It's no wonder there are already major questions about whether Richardson has the stamina, both mentally and physically, to lead a team through a full NFL season. So between the injuries, the inconsistent preparation, and the in-game focus lapses, Richardson has yet to show that he can bring it week in and week out. All he's done is prove that he is among the laziest, talented players in the entire league. Mai Beckton, OT, Los Angeles Chargers. There's no questioning Mai Beckton's physical gifts. At 6'7", 370 pounds, with feet that should not move that well at that size, he's an athletic outlier at tackle. On paper, Beckton should be one of the most dominant linemen in the league. But conditioning and effort have been the story since the day he entered the NFL. The Jets drafted Beckton to anchor their line, but instead spent years trying to get him to keep his weight down and his work ethic up.
NFL draft, the New York Jets select Mai Beckton, tackle, Louisville.
Injuries played a part too, but let's be honest, effort and preparation did more so. Beckton was frequently gassed by mid-drive, and it became common knowledge that if you could survive the first few reps, well, you could beat him late in the series. Granted, he was able to string together a solid stretch of performances last season during the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl run, but still, it's hard to believe that it is going to be sustainable going forward given his track record. Especially with the nice payday that he got to sign in Los Angeles. Yeah, can't imagine the motivation is quite the same now. Nevertheless, now it is the Chargers' turn to try their luck, and there is a growing fear that it'll be the same old story. First few games, he'll look sharp, then the tank's empty. On a Chargers O-line that Jim Harbaugh built around aggression and sustained effort, that's a bit of a problem. If Beckton doesn't find a way to stay in high gear and fast, he is going to get exposed again. Derek Brown, DT, Carolina Panthers. Yes, former 7th overall pick Derek Brown is a physical freak. That part is absolutely undeniable. But with the near $100 million extension that Carolina gave him last season, they certainly paid him like one. But unfortunately, the tape doesn't always match the paycheck. Anyone who has followed the Panthers closely the last few seasons have seen it. There are stretches where Brown looks absolutely unblockable, shedding guards, collapsing pockets, swallowing runs, and then there are entire quarters, sometimes games, where you forget he's even on the field. Now, of course, he missed nearly all of last season with an injury, but he may come out of the gate eager to prove that he's worth the contract and to keep his name relevant in the league. But let's just say that we have our suspicions that he's not going to end up living up to that dollar amount unless the way he approaches the game drastically changes. Ziggy Smith, edge, free agent. Ziggy Smith remains one of the league's premier sack artists when he's dialed in. There is no questioning that. He can turn the corner with burst and power, and his highlight reel is full of splashy plays. But NFL insiders know the other side of the story. Smith has built a bit of a league-wide reputation as a play-to-play motor guy. You know, when the play is coming his way or when the lights are brightest, he turns it on. But when the play drifts away from him, or I don't know, when the game gets into a grind, that effort level visibly drops. This became more obvious last season with the difference in effort that he showed in Cleveland versus Detroit, where he was traded in the back half of the year to a team ready to make a playoff run. It's still unclear where Smith will land this offseason because, no shocker, he's probably going to wait it out to avoid as much of OTAs and camp as he can. Look, all we're saying is, if you aren't a legit contender, tread lightly with Smith. The last thing you want to do is offer him a big payday to mail it in when your team stumbles out the gate. Chase Young, edge, New Orleans Saints. Few players in the NFL carry a more frustrating what could have been tag than former second overall pick Chase Young. His rookie season was electric. Young looked like a foundational piece for Washington. You know, a player who could reshape the identity of the defense. But since then, well, it's been a masterclass in inconsistent effort and wasted potential. Washington ultimately gave up on him, not because of talent, but because they just couldn't trust the motor. The 49ers tried to revitalize him, but they failed. Now the Saints are heading into year 2 with the fallen star, hoping that the big energy of the Big Easy will spark something new. But unfortunately, hope is not a strategy, and I wouldn't place any bets on Young getting named to the Pro Bowl again, let alone an All-Pro team. At this point, we think it's clear that Chase Young is a high-variance player who might take over a drive and might take the next 2 off. So for a Saints team that desperately needs reliable pass rush, this is a dangerous gamble. Asiah Simmons, LB/safety, New York Giants. Asiah Simmons remains one of the most uniquely gifted athletes in all of football. I mean, there just aren't many guys who can line up at linebacker on one snap, play deep safety on the next, and look like a legit star at both spots. But as any Cardinals or Giants fan can tell you, raw athleticism is only half the battle. Effort and consistency really matter, and has always been the Achilles heel for Simmons. Arizona drafted him 8th overall in 2020 with the vision of building their entire defense around this new age chess piece. I mean, the expectations were massive. They saw him as a matchup eraser, a modern NFL star. But far too many games saw Simmons floating through space, taking lazy angles, or arriving late to the party with arm tackle energy. His tackling tape alone became a cautionary tale on coaching clinics, how not to finish a play. For a top 10 pick, this wasn't just disappointing, it was absolutely infuriating. Arizona soured on him fast, finally cutting bait after 3 years of frustration. And it wasn't a talent issue, it was a motor issue, plain and simple. I mean, think about it, all that talent and they only got a 7th round pick out of New York for him? The effort behind the scenes must have been even worse than what we saw on tape. If Simmons ever matches his effort to his absurd talent, he could rewrite the narrative. But at this point, 4 years in, well, the league knows what he is. One of the most inconsistent, frustrating effort players on the field, and one of the biggest letdowns of the 2020 draft class. But hey, who do you think the laziest star player in the game today is? Who do you think we're right on here? Who do you think we're wrong about? Was there anyone that we may have missed? Let us know in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, then hey, clicking that like button helps us out a ton. And you know, we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, then subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you guys next time.